Hi, I'm Jim Taylor. Welcome to In Favor Resources, and welcome to Meeting Jesus on the Way. It's a video teaching series that's designed to help us understand more and appreciate more the importance of highways, of roads and streets in history, in scripture, and for us today in Indiana. Now, before we go any farther, you're going to want to go to our website, infavorresources.com, and download the handout for today's video. There are blanks to fill in, there's some illustrations there and some important statistics and other statements. You're looking for the handout for video number 5 in this series, and the title is Indiana Highways Are a Big Deal. Now, in the last couple of videos, we reviewed some of the most important roads in history, in ancient Israel, and then in other places in Scripture. And today, as we promised, we're focusing on some of the most interesting and exciting and significant roads in Indiana. You're filling in the blanks now on your handout. Believe it or not, in Indiana, we have the buffalo to thank for our present highways. In pioneer days, really as always, the path of least resistance determines the line of travel. So when you come to a mountain, you go around the mountain, you don't go over it unless you have to. You avoid swampy places. You look for places where there's sure footing that will provide safe passage, and so on and so on. Well, in Indiana, we're talking about the buffalo here. They were large and heavy in proportion to their body. They had a very small foot, a very small hoof print. They could not cross marshy land easily, and they were constantly moving. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of them in herds, constantly traveling back and forth, different places and the same places over and over again. Now, these buffalo traces, which are what we call the trodden down paths that they formed, these traces were well beaten and definitely marked. They were up to 20 feet wide. That's wide enough for 2 wagons to go abreast or to pass each other on the road, which was important without one having to be in danger of getting stuck to the side. When streams, when natural rivers and waterways did not lead to the desired destination or to the right path, then these buffalo traces were used for human travel. The Native Americans followed the buffalo traces because they provided game. The pioneers followed the Native Americans, and the settlers followed the pioneers. So these animal trails became footpaths, and the footpaths became bridle paths for horses, which became sled and wagon roads. And traders would eventually carry their goods over these roads. Generals would march their armies over these same roads. Stagecoaches would eventually travel on them regularly, and these became our modern roads and our highways in the state of Indiana today. So from the very beginning, these roads, these highways, they were intended to be the most direct, the fastest way to get someplace else. So if you're in a hurry to get there, you want to get there straight, you want to get there fast, get on the highway. Take the direct route. Take the main route. So now let's look. With that as background, let's look at some of the important Indiana highways. The romance, the adventure, the excitement behind the people, behind the stories, behind these roads. Let's start with the National Road. Fill in that blank. The National Road, this was an east to west route, and the National Road played an iconic role in the westward expansion of the United States. And Indianapolis led the modernization of the Natural Road. The nation's first federally funded highway began as the historic Braddock Road, and because it originated over in Cumberland in Maryland, it was often called the Cumberland Road. But in 1806, that's how far back we're going here, in 1806, President Thomas Jefferson authorized further expansion to replace the old wagon trails and footpaths. And so construction in Indiana began in 1828 and expanded east and west simultaneously. At the same time, they were building toward Richmond and building toward Terre Haute. But because federal funding was never allotted to fully grade and gravel, the road could often become a sloppy mess, causing stuck cars on rainy, muddy days when automobiles became popular. In 1917, a 3-mile section in Indianapolis, on what is now known to us as Washington Street, a 3-mile section, what we would call downtown, was made into a hard surfaced road. And that was the first section of the national road to be so constructed. It happened here in Indiana. It was celebrated with a huge ceremony. There was a parade with dignitaries and banners and streamers and cars draped with the American flag. This came from an article in the Indianapolis Star, and I quote, "The eyes of Indiana and the nation were upon Marion County." This was seen as a very, very significant event in the modernization of our country. Judge J.M. Lowe, who gave an address during the ceremony, said, "Indiana has struck fire here, and the sparks have fallen into other states and fired the hearts of the population to good roads." This is now a new way of thinking. Good roads, something that's good for the new automobile. During a ceremony, a banner which was labeled "Bad Roads" was stretched across the road and cut to symbolize the end of bad roads in Marion County. Well, here's a spoiler alert. They haven't gotten rid of all the bad roads in Marion County yet. I know because I drive over some of them daily, and they're still very, very bad. But civic leaders dreamed that this road would span the entire country. Unfortunately, funds dried up and construction ended in Illinois. It began in Maryland, came all the way through Indiana, and ended, I believe, in Vandalia, Illinois. At the time, traveling by railroad was so entrenched, and it made better sense financially. It was hard to drive down these muddy roads on these new automobiles, and so rail travel grew in popularity, and it just made better financial sense at the time. Landmarks along the way, if you'd like to trace the route of the National Road, you will find the Madonna of the Trail Monument in Richmond. It's a memorial to pioneer mothers. The James Whitcomb Riley Boyhood Home and Museum. You'll find that in Greenfield. The Circle Center Mall and Victory Field in downtown Indianapolis are on the National Road. The shops at Perry Crossing and Plainfield on the National Road. And the only authentic World War II V-1 rocket in America is on the town square in Greencastle on the National Road. So next, let's take the Michigan Road. This was Indiana's pioneer highway and ran north and south. Write that on your handout. The Michigan Road. Now, this is one of Indiana's earliest highways, and it was built in the 1830s to connect the Ohio River down in the south to Indianapolis in the middle and onto Lake Michigan in the north. And it was called probably the most important transportation route in the fledgling state of Indiana. You can still drive this route from end to end today. I mean, almost all of the Michigan Road's original route has survived. From one end, you can drive straight through to the other end with only a few brief detours, and along the way, the road takes on many different characters. You'll go from almost forgotten farm road to county U.S. highways to major city thoroughfares to interstate highways. When you follow the Michigan Road, you are connecting with Indiana's history. It's lined with attractions and events all year round for you and your family. For instance, in Madison, music, art, food festivals, Christmas candlelight tours, and of course the regatta. In Greensburg, the Farmers Market and Tenderloin Throwdown. In Indianapolis, the Crooked Creek Farmers Market is on the Michigan Road. The Miss Indiana pageant and Christmas in the village of Zionsville. The Fulton County Museum. In Michigan City, the festivals at the Great Lakes Grand Prix, and so on and so on. The Michigan Road was instrumental in opening up the state to commerce and to settlement. It was used by the pioneer, someone has said, as a path to freedom by the runaway slave, and as the trail down which the Native American was removed for their lands. This was Indiana's first super highway, the Michigan Road. Also, let's go to the Lincoln Highway, which ran east and west and spanned the entire width of the Hoosier State. Now, the Lincoln Highway opened in 1913 as a result of a national crusade spearheaded by an important Hoosier entrepreneur. His name was Carl Fisher. You might want to look him up because it's worth looking at this man's life because of what he did for Indiana, for the nation, and for progress, especially regarding the automobile. He he helped to build the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He was a guy that had such thick glasses he could hardly see, but he was a bicycle racer and just outstanding stunts in Indianapolis. It's just an amazing life. And you should know this background to the highways that you drive every day. He was a Greensburg native, and he was almost entirely responsible for the idea and the execution of the Lincoln Highway. You see, he was involved very early on with manufacturing automobiles. But he found that there were very few places to drive these because you got stuck all the time in the Indiana mud. So he founded the Lincoln Highway Association to advocate for the creation of a transcontinental roadway, one that would go all the way across the nation, west and east. During an era in the automobile's infancy when long-distance travel almost always was by railroad. I mean, you couldn't count on the fact that you could even go 10 miles in your car before you got stuck, and somebody with a horse and buggy had to come and pull you out. As US Today reported, paved roads existed only in cities and towns, and auto travel on rutted, unpaved byways was not for the faint of heart. So to bring attention to this project, Fisher arranged for statues of Abraham Lincoln, remember this is called the Lincoln Highway, for statues of Abraham Lincoln to be placed along the route. It extended from New York, cut across northern Indiana, and westward all the way to San Francisco. It is more than 3,000 miles long, and it has been called the nation's first truly transcontinental road. This is an amazing story. It had amazing results. It brought great prosperity to the hundreds of cities and towns and villages along the way. The Lincoln Highway became affectionately known as the Main Street across America. Indiana cities and towns located on the Lincoln Highway include Fort Wayne, South Bend, Valparaiso, and Elkhart. And because of the tremendous economic boost it gave to all the towns and cities along the route, the Lincoln Highway inspired many other named long-distance roads, including, for example, the Yellowstone Trail, the National Old Trails Road, the Dixie Highway, the Victory Highway, and many more. It also inspired the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956. This was the act that was championed by President Eisenhower and created the highway system that we know today. It happened because President Eisenhower remembered his experience as a young soldier crossing the country in an Army convoy in 1919 on the Lincoln Highway. And he wanted that those memories to spread out all over the United States. And finally, we come to the Dixie Highway. This was also founded by Carl Fisher, the Hoosier entrepreneur. He was spurred on by his success with the Lincoln Highway, which remember went east and west. And so he proposed the idea of a north-south highway. It was intended initially to bring business, to bring commerce, to bring prospective investors to the town that he had created in the southern part of the United States. See, Carl Fisher had gone down to Florida, and he saw a swamp there. And in his mind, he had a vision for something much greater. So he dredged the swamp, and he built a town, which became a city, and he called it Miami Beach. The Miami Beach you have been to was founded by this Hoosier entrepreneur, and it was built on a swamp. He established a highway that would run from Miami Beach, Florida, all the way up to Chicago and to Michigan to bring money, to bring automobiles, which were becoming very popular but couldn't travel very far, and to bring money down to Miami Beach. Support from the idea came from local businessmen, state officials, the auto industry, and governors of states along the route. Almost immediately, small towns and cities along this highway began experiencing the benefits. Oil and gas companies extended their reach by building gas stations in key stops. Now, watch how much this sounds like today. They built gas stations along the highway. Business owners leaped at the opportunity, constructing inns along the road because people had to stop and sleep, and restaurants along the route because people had to stop and eat. All of these were meant to serve travelers, and it sounds just like what you see every day when you go out on the highway. In Georgia, cities situated on the highway even promoted monuments and remains of the Civil War to tourists as attractions to visit. Unfortunately, the Dixie Highway's name was short-lived because in 1927, the federal government had taken over the route with the creation of the U.S. highway system, and so state and federal markers replaced all of those Dixie Highway markers. And today, virtually all of the old Dixie Highway has been renamed or rerouted, but together with the Lincoln Highway, the old Dixie Highway has helped set forth a nationwide project. This is important, for the improvement of roads. And it was called the Good Roads Movement, and it began here in Indiana with Carl Fisher. It was the first major north-south highway, and it made traveling long distances possible for almost anyone. Its legacy lives on because it played such a significant, pivotal role in American history. So those are 4 Indiana highways. At the bottom of your handout, I don't believe it's an exaggeration to say, today, Indiana is known for its highways. Consider these 2 points, the bullets there at the bottom of your sheet. We have more miles of interstate highway per square mile than any other state in the Union. And more major highways intersect here than any other state in the Union of any size. Those 2 facts taken together certainly make our state motto, the Crossroads of America, more than just a slogan. It is a fact. And my conclusion is Indiana highways are a big deal. There's some information on the second page or the back of your handout. I've included some additional statistics and numbers, including a timeline of highways in Indiana, Indiana highways by the numbers, Indiana highways then and now. But again, I just want to say these highways in this state are a big, big deal. Next up, the next video will be about the warning signs on the highway, the dangers, the pitfalls, the negative consequences and connotations of highways. But first, let me give you just a question for following up on today's video. You heard about 4 major highways, all very interesting, all very important, happening at a pivotal time, changes in American history and transportation. I wonder how many of these highways that are in Indiana or pass through Indiana are you familiar with? I'm going to go down a list. I'm just curious, how many of these sound familiar to you? The Grand Army of the Republic Highway, the Dunes Highway, the Fort to Port Corridor, the Wabash Way, the Bootjack South Bend Trail, the Jackson Highway, the Dixie Beeline Highway, the Aidway Auto Trail, the Atlantic Pacific Highway, Pikes Peak Ocean to Ocean Highway, the Whitewater Canal Scenic Byway, the Iron Brigade Highway, the Hoosier Heartland Corridor, the Corn Belt Route, the Yellowstone Trail, the Rangeline Road, Indiana's North-South Main Street, the White Spot Trail, the National Roosevelt Midland Trail, the Hoosier Way, Ohio River Scenic Byway, and the Indiana Medal of Honor Highway. And there's adventure in all of those names. Awaiting you on Indiana's highways are new discoveries, new experiences, new adventures, new sights and sounds, meeting new people and experiencing new things. Indiana highways, they're not just for getting to work anymore. So what are you waiting for? Get in your car, hop on your bike, put your hiking shoes on, and go.